Good morning and welcome to the Western New York Women's Foundation's Pathways to Progress Speaker Series webinar on the power of your purse. I'm Corey Fabian Barrett, and Director of External Affairs at the Western New York Women's Foundation, and I'm joined on the webinar this morning by today's speakers, Marianne Coulson, Salpi Doering, and Anne-Marie Williams from Morgan Stanley. We also have Mary Arasi, our Strategic Initiatives Coordinator, on the team this morning. Thank you all for joining us today. Before we get started, a quick word about the Western New York Women's Foundation and the work that we've been doing lately. Our organization exists to support the women and girls of our community, a mission which has become even more critical in recent months. During these strange times, we've seen how a pandemic of this scale especially impacts and disrupts the lives of women in our communities. NPR recently reported that women have suffered 55% of job losses caused by the pandemic, largely because sectors with high female employment have been uniquely hit. On top of this, women are shouldering the burden of increased childcare and other caregiving at home, as you can see from the numbers shown on the screen. So, through the Western New York Women's Foundation's All In initiative, we recently released our best practice strategies for workplaces to support women returning to the office or workforce after COVID-19. Women are a critical part of the workforce, and right now we have an opportunity to reimagine work and an economy that works for women. You can read more about these recommendations and download a printable flyer that you could share with your employer at WNYWomensFoundation.org. COVID-19 has only compounded and made more visible the stress and inequalities facing women every day. That's why we're actively continuing our work to advocate for women's economic empowerment, paid sick leave, and affordable, accessible childcare for all. So thank you for making the time to join us on this webinar today. We know that your time is precious and we really appreciate your support of our work. We'll continue creating these spaces for women to convene and learn, so stay tuned for information about our upcoming offerings. But for now, I have some housekeeping notes for today's webinar. We will be online talking with you all for about an hour today with time for questions at the end of the formal presentation. This full session is also being recorded and will be freely available online afterwards if you want to watch it again or share it with a friend. In your webinar sidebar, you can see that there is a handout section which provides a downloadable resource guide for today's presentation. Also in your sidebar, just below the handouts, you will see that there is a chat box. We will be pausing for questions at the end of today's webinar, but at any time, if you have a question or want to share an experience you've had, simply type it into the chat box. You'll see where you can select send question to staff, and that will make sure that we see it. I'd now like to take a minute to introduce one of today's speakers, Marianne Coulson. Marianne is a Senior Vice President and Branch Manager with Morgan Stanley and an active volunteer in her community, including board service with Buffalo Prep and the Gas School. She has been honored by the Girl Scouts as one of their Women of Distinction and received the Athena Leadership Award, an honor bestowed annually to exceptional individuals who have contributed their time and energy to improve the quality of life for others in our community. Marianne is also a dynamic member of our own Western New York Women's Board, serving on numerous committees and giving presentations to girls throughout our community about the importance of financial literacy. We are so pleased that she could be with us this morning, so welcome, Marianne. I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our other speakers today.
Thank you, Corey, and thank you, Mary. As Corey mentioned, I'm Marianne Coulson, Branch Manager for Morgan Stanley from our Buffalo branch. I'm excited to be part of this presentation today, providing advice and financial empowerment for women. This presentation was originally scheduled to be in person with a panel of female advisors from Morgan Stanley. We reorganized the panel discussion and have asked two of our financial advisors to present this webinar. However, I wanted to take a few minutes and introduce the entire panel. Kathy Money is a financial advisor from our Buffalo branch, and Jessica Roach is a financial advisor from our Williamsville branch. Speaking today are Salpi Doering and Anne-Marie Williams. Salpi's been working in global financial markets for 24 years. She joined Morgan Stanley in 2016 as a financial advisor in our Buffalo branch. She is originally from Toronto and spent the first half of her career as a stock trader, moving to Buffalo in 2005. She has always been very interested in the financial markets, and her ultimate goal was to take her experience in the markets and work one-on-one with people to help them navigate their own financial lives, and being a financial advisor gave her the opportunity to do just that. Anne Marie Williams has been working in financial markets for the last 6 years. She joined Morgan Stanley in the fall of 2018 as a financial advisor in our Buffalo office. Prior to entering this industry, she worked for the Buffalo News for 15 years as an advertising sales executive. However, with the decline in newspaper readership and the shift to social media, Anne Marie felt she accomplished all she could there and needed a change. She believed it was a good time to reinvent herself and pursue this line of work due to her passion for helping others and her love of investing. A tradition and core value at Morgan Stanley is that clients come first, and we are dedicated to the priorities of the clients that we serve. Salpi and Anne Marie will illustrate this as they both focus on helping women like yourselves pursue their financial goals with thoughtful advice and guidance and with access to the investment insights of Morgan Stanley. Leading with education in the financial world is what they are passionate about. It's all about helping people navigate a successful plan to achieve a meaningful lifestyle. And now I'm delighted to pass the presentation on to Salpi and Anne Marie.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time this morning to join us on a subject we're very passionate about. This is Salpi speaking, and today we're going to discuss options for saving and growing your money. There's no time like the present to begin building the financial future we all envision. Before we get started, we wanted to take a minute and share with you Morgan Stanley's core values. You'll see throughout this presentation how we integrate our values and beliefs towards our clients and employees. Our 4 core values are: 1, putting clients' interests first; 2, doing the right thing by acting with integrity; 3, leading with exceptional ideas; and 4, giving back to our community. We're all listening in for different reasons today, experiencing different stages in our lives, including starting a new business, transitioning to a new job, retiring, or saving for a child's education. Also, we all have we have a diverse audience here today, filled with new and astute investors. And our presentation will cover some basics along with current and historical data that relates to everyone in the audience. Women define wealth as doing what's important for them and their families to live the life that we love. Connect your personal values with the decisions that you make about your money for every stage of life. What's in your purse is one of the themes for this presentation. That leads us to the agenda for this morning. We'll start with an overview of some basic financial principles that affect your savings, then go over some strategies for successful savings, and finally, we'll talk about investing in your future and thinking ahead to retirement. Throughout this presentation, we'll be using quotes from women that we find both powerful and inspiring to think about money and investing in a thoughtful way. Ann Richards, politician and the 45th governor of Texas, once said, "If you think taking care of yourself is selfish, change your mind." This is a powerful and relative quote in our discussion. As we're all aware, there is a real wealth gap for women. Women tend to have less in their retirement savings. And here's some reasons why. We tend to earn less than men. On average, women earn 80 cents on the dollar. When our careers are interrupted by children, we often experience a motherhood penalty that leads to lower pay throughout our lifetime. Women typically spend more out of the workforce to care for family members. 66% of family caregivers are women, which can lead to a host of unexpected costs in terms of both time and money. Since traditional pension plans and Social Security benefits are generally determined by number of years of service, leaving work for periods of time often means lower retirement benefits. We as women tend to live an average of 5 years longer than men do, which can make it difficult to save enough for a longer retirement. And only 46% of women participate in a retirement plan. That's more than half of us that don't have enough savings for our future. Women's journeys are more of a balancing act that requires us to juggle a number of competing priorities. Our advice is, in order to bridge the gap, you have to take the time to make your finances a priority, which many of you are doing today by joining us. Susan B. Anthony said, "Every woman should have a purse of her own." As mentioned, this is a theme for our presentation, along with the goal to provide you with practical guidance and advice regarding your personal finances. So let's first talk about the benefit of earning interest. Interest is money that's paid to you by the financial institution holding your money. For illustration purposes, let's say you invest $1,000. You could put it under your mattress or in a safe deposit box and earn $0. Or you could take the same $1,000 and place it into savings and earn 3%, giving you $1,030 at the end of the year. I should mention that this particular presentation uses 3% to illustrate a savings interest rate, even though the current interest rates are paying closer to 0%. This next slide demonstrates the power of compounding. Using the last example, you've placed $1,000 in a savings account that pays 3% interest. At the end of the first year, your $1,000 has grown to $1,030. Now, the 3% interest you earn will be paid on $1,030, and interest is paid on the increasing amount every year. Also, since most financial institutions calculate interest daily, you earn even more from compounding. This example shows how it works if you make a habit of saving at least a little bit more each month. If you added $20 each month to your initial investment and collected 3% annual interest, your original $1,000 grows to $14,112 over a 30-year period. Our next slide is titled, "Don't Forget About Inflation." When discussing investments, it's prudent to add in a discussion on inflation. Inflation is measured by the Consumer Price Index, the CPI, and it measures the average change in prices over time for a basket of goods and services. From this chart, you can see that the inflation rate varies over time. Inflation in 2018 was 2%, and in 2019, it was 1.4%. It was as high as 5.6% during the global financial crisis in 2008. Inflation of certain items over the last 12 months has been noticeable. Consumers have paid 4% more for groceries, and the pandemic has caused eggs to increase by 16%, meat, specifically beef, by 5%, and pork prices by 3%. This is due to disruptions in the food supply chains, meat processing plant shutdowns, and a shift away from restaurants, along with panic buying. The bottom line is, if you want to maintain or increase your purchasing power, your savings needs to grow at a rate that is higher than inflation. If not, this slide shows that our $1,000 example is reduced to $970 using an inflation rate of 3%, forcing you to buy less because your savings is not keeping up with inflation. Anne-Marie is now going to go over some strategies for successful saving.
Thank you, Salpi. As Betty Davis once said, to fulfill a dream, to be allowed to sweat over lonely labor, to be given a chance to create, is the meat and potatoes of life. The money is the gravy. For women, wealth is about more than just money. Women are 70% more likely than men to view wealth as dream fulfillment. The pursuit of following your dreams is different for everyone. It could mean having the opportunity to pursue other career choices, flexibility in working from home, creating your own hours, or starting your own business. This gives us as women a sense of purpose, which is equally important. To put things in perspective, here are some interesting statistics from recent research on employee wellness. These groups are defined as millennials, ages 24 to 39, Gen Xers, ages 40 to 59, and baby boomers, ages 60 to 78. As you can see, finances are top of mind for people of all ages. And across age groups, only 50% of people are prepared with emergency savings. Also note, the two generations younger than baby boomers report that 50% plus feel financial stress. Bottom line, ladies, at any age, save early, automatically, and often. And remember, you can always borrow for your children's education. However, you cannot borrow for your own retirement. Ann Richards was quoted earlier, and it's worth repeating. If you think taking care of yourself is selfish, change your mind. So we want to share some advice on how you should get started. We advise women to spend at least 30 minutes thinking about the next 30 years. Sometime after listening to this presentation, make a commitment to focus on financial planning, reviewing your goals, getting organized, and setting clear goals. Gather all of your financial documents in one place and begin by paying off your debt. Create a budget and estimate your fixed costs. What is essential versus discretionary? And pay yourself first. This means putting a portion of your salary in savings. Create a savings goal and begin saving to ensure that you have sufficient emergency funds to cover at least 6 months of expenses. The earlier you begin saving, the more time you have to benefit from compounded interest. Trim spending by changing your habits. Find ways to cut back on non-essentials. During this quarantine, how many of you reviewed your credit card statements and took pause at how much you were spending on morning coffee, dining out, or other items? And think ahead to retirement and the tax benefits offered. And lastly, make sure you are contributing enough to your own future first. Focus specifically on your personal and financial goals. Once you've set yourself up for success, you can determine the best way to support others. Now, Salpi is going to take a minute to share with you one way we are helping in bridging our wealth gap.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Success in bridging our wealth gap starts with education and teaching women and young girls ways to take control of their financial destiny. This also fits in with one of our core values we mentioned earlier, in giving back to our community. We thought this was a good time to mention one specific way we've been active in educating young girls towards financial literacy. We've been presenting a book called It's a Money Thing, A Girl's Guide to Managing Money to groups of young girls during career days and after-school programs within our community. We believe that as we educate these young girls early in life, they will not struggle with their finances and life goals later in life. As Linda Davis Taylor, CEO of her own investment firm, said, teaching her about how money really works, and she can change the world. This is so inspirational for us because we are committed and dedicated to continuing with this important endeavor, the education of our younger generation.
Thank you, Salpi. I participated in one of these events last year, and it was so rewarding to see these young girls excited to learn about savings and the stock market, and each of them received a copy of the book to take home too. So let's talk about setting some goals. We continue to advise clients to have 3 buckets. Short-term goals, 1 to 5 years out, such as building an emergency fund for 6 months of expenses. Medium-term goals, 5 to 10 years out, such as making a down payment on a home. And long-term goals, 20 plus years, such as having enough money for retirement. This slide follows through from the last. There are 3 types of accounts you will most likely need to align with each of these goals. A checking or money market account that holds 1 to 2 months of expenses. A savings account to hold your emergency fund. This money should not be put into the stock market due to the risk of volatility and changing market conditions. And an investment account, such as brokerage, IRA, or 401k. These accounts are for longer-term goals. As payments become increasingly electronic, you may find that the physical location is less important, and an online bank offers everything you need. Especially now, considering we have not had many opportunities to meet or see anyone in person since March. Another important point to consider is the security of your account and how your financial institution safeguards your assets and personal information in terms of cybersecurity and fraud prevention. Morgan Stanley employs world-class talent to lead these efforts. We have built a cyber defense organization in-house, and we work closely with industry and government partners to evaluate the threat environment. Charles Schwab's daughter, Carrie Schwab Pomerantz, said, "For women, financial independence is a matter of necessity." To achieve that financial independence that Carrie states, we need to think ahead to retirement. Aya Lareda is a securities representative who focuses on promoting financial literacy. She states, "When you invest, you are buying a day you don't have to work." That is what retirement is all about, ladies. Just as we showed you these groups earlier and how they felt about their savings, here are some statistics about how they feel about their retirement. As you can see, many are saving for retirement. However, they are worried about running out of money in their lifetime. So let's talk about your options. In most financial seminars, presenters talk about how important it is to invest in your company's 401k or 403b non-for-profit program. These slides illustrate the benefits of contributing to a 401k, which enables you to put away pre-tax dollars in a retirement account. Your money grows tax deferred, and many companies have a matching contribution. This is a great place to start. At least save as much as the company match. For example, if your company puts in 4%, you can contribute 4% for an 8% total savings. Next is compounding, which we discussed earlier, and you generally have a wide range of investment options. And lastly, convenience. The money is automatically deducted from your paycheck. Also, there is a potential tax benefit of contributing to a 401k, as it reduces your adjusted gross income. This is the dollar amount on which you pay tax. For example, if you put $3,000 into your 401k this year, and you are in a 22% tax bracket, you will reduce your taxable income by $3,000, and your tax bill will be reduced by $660. This is money in your pocket. This number could even be higher since the maximum amount you can save in your 401k in 2020 is $19,500 if you are under 50 years old and $26,000 over the age of 50 with the catch-up option. For all the entrepreneurs on the call, you have options as well. You can set up a traditional IRA which has many benefits as a 401k or 403b plan. It reduces your adjusted gross income, grows tax deferred, and is taxed when you make withdrawals. 2020 contributions are $6,000 if you are under 50 and $7,000 over 50 with the catch-up option. A Roth IRA is different than a traditional IRA, as your contributions are made with post-tax dollars, but any growth over time is tax-free upon withdrawal. In addition, certain withdrawals are allowed without penalty after 5 years. It's important for all of you to know that Congress recently passed a new law last year called the Secure Act, setting every community up for Retirement Enhancement Act. One of the many benefits includes allowing retirement plan participants to take their required minimum distributions, or RMDs, from 70.5 to 72. And it allows traditional IRA owners to keep making contributions indefinitely as long as you have earned income. So you have more time and opportunity to save like never before. Just as we mentioned earlier, where we are out in the community educating young girls about saving early, this slide is a hypothetical illustration showing John as a late saver and Jane starting at 25. Even though they both saved exactly the same amount over the same number of years, you will notice that by age 65, Jane has substantially more savings than John, $556,000 more. This is because Jane had an additional 15 years to take advantage of the power of compounding interest. This scenario assumes an 8% average return on investments, just to illustrate this point. The goal of the slide is that it's never too late to start investing. However, the earlier, the better. I'm now going to turn it back over to Salpi to discuss investing in the market.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Given the recent volatility in the markets, Anne-Marie and I thought it was important to share an historical perspective with you. Today, we've discussed factors that influence your savings, strategies for successful saving, and thinking ahead to retirement. Given current interest rates, we wanted to help alleviate some fears about investing in the market. This slide notes the different asset classes available for investing. Your decision of which asset class to use will be based on your time horizon, your risk profile, and the goals you set. We spent time discussing compound interest and its importance. And the next two slides we want to share highlight the importance of asset allocation and diversification. We focus on the long term and discourage the strategy of market timing. As you can view from this slide, the most important determinant of your return is your asset allocation. It represents 91%. This next slide illustrates the importance of diversification spread over all of these boxes. I realize it's busy and difficult to read, so let's focus on the colors to illustrate the point of the slide. For example, note the first column and the first burgundy box at the top left corner, which represents emerging markets. In 2007, emerging markets equities performance prior to the financial crisis was the best performer. When we go to 2008, in the following year, emerging markets performance was last at a negative 53.6%. This chart illustrates advice consistently given. Diversify your assets and do not put all of your eggs in one basket. Diversification does not guarantee a profit or protect against losses in a declining financial market, as noted in the fine print on the slide. Erica Jong, an American novelist, particularly known for her book called fear of flying, said, "And the trouble is, if you don't risk anything, you risk even more." Quoting Erica here is relevant as we consider that if you want to keep pace with inflation and have a long-term perspective on investing, then taking the added risk could provide you more growth over time. This slide illustrates our long-term view and performance of different asset classes. Here's what history shows us. Take note of the light blue line on this chart. If you had invested $1 in 1926 in U.S. Treasury bills, it would be worth $22 currently. Now, note the dark blue line. If you had invested $1 in the S&P 500, you would have $8,370. That's a notable difference. To Erica's point, consider taking on the appropriate amount of risk. If you don't, you will not be able to keep up with inflation. That is why this is so significant, illustrating the power of investing and compounding. Let's also consider the historical chart of the S&P 500, which tracks the performance of 500 of the largest publicly traded companies in the United States over time. It illustrates that throughout all of these devastating world events that caused previous market crashes, such as the Great Depression, the Vietnam War, the Black Monday 1987 crash, 9/11, and the 2009 financial crisis, the stock market has grown despite these negative events. Also, moderate corrections are very common. It may surprise you that the average number of days to recover from a 5% or more correction from March 2009 to February 2019 is 68 days. These slides have illustrated an historical perspective and shown that successful investing involves patience and that over the long term, the S&P 500 has grown despite negative events. It's easy to let our emotions get in the way. However, having a plan and sticking to it can help you reduce the chances of making common mistakes. This slide reinforces our belief that you should seek advice, develop a plan, stick to it, and remain diversified with a long-term view. So before we open it up to questions, we want to share a few final thoughts with you. Jackie Greer, a columnist in the early 1900s, said, "You don't have to be afraid of change. You don't have to worry about what's been taken away. Just look to see what's been added." In the last few months, all of us have had to adapt to so much change in our lives. What has not changed and is even more relevant is the need to be financially secure. And that is part of what we wanted to share with all of you, to envision your future and look at the gains in your life, not just what's been taken away. In today's reality of the new normal, we are all starting over again on some level. Being financially prepared for the future can provide security in the face of uncertainty. We believe educated women create a ripple effect, inspiring generations of men and women to come. That's why we're committed to empowering women with the knowledge and tools needed, whether you're buying a home, starting a family, navigating a divorce, or giving back to a cause you care about. Anne-Marie has a few final thoughts to share before we open it up for questions.
Thank you, Salpi. We have covered a lot of material this morning and hope we have answered some of your questions. And please remember, you don't have to do it alone. Seek out family members, friends, or professional advisors. And here is our contact info. And please feel free to reach out to us at any time. As a commitment to some of the resources we offer on this very important subject, women and wealth, we would like to highlight A Woman's Guide to Life and Money, located on the right side of this page. It's a manual that goes through different segments of life, be it getting married, starting a new business, or planning for retirement. There is great content in each section and book suggestions at the end of each chapter for those who want to learn more about certain topics. And we have added this link in the handout section located on the right rail for those of you who would like to download a copy this morning. We want to leave you with a favorite quote that Ann Richards enjoyed using from Bob Dave. After all, Ginger Rogers did everything that Fred Astaire did. She just did it backwards and in high heels. We want to thank you again for providing us this opportunity to discuss this subject. We are delighted that we could share this information. All of us at Morgan Stanley wish everyone listening today good health along with much happiness and success in all your endeavors. So if anyone has any questions at this time, we would be happy to answer them.
Thank you for that incredibly informative presentation. We do have a couple of questions. So the first one is, what's the best way to get started to start getting organized before reaching out to a professional?
That's a great question, Corey. Well, the first step would be to gather vital information about your family and take inventory of your critical documents. Some of the documents that you might want to put together would be bank and investment statements, insurance and annuity statements, mortgage statements, credit card statements, any retirement or Social Security reports, and any tax documents. You should know what you own and what you owe. And that way you can put a budget together to figure out what is essential versus discretionary. And then once you have everything organized, that's the best time to start a financial plan. And we also have document checklists that we could also provide to you, to give you a list so you can remember everything.
Wonderful, thank you. The next question is, how much should I be saving for retirement?
I can answer that question as well. In general, a good rule of thumb is to try to save at least 10 to 15% of your income. Once you've saved enough money to cover your day-to-day expenses and any other expected emergencies, then you can start planning for longer-term goals. I think everyone's lifestyles will be different in retirement, so there's no set magic number, but if you can begin by putting away, 10 to 15%, you'll be fine in retirement.
Thank you for that. Our third question is, what advice can you share with our audience for women who are interested in beginning to invest in the stock market or currently invest?
Hi, this is Salpi. I'd be happy to answer that question. It's a great question, and I think the best advice I could give would be to say that investing is not just for the super wealthy. There are a lot of ways that people at every level can start investing, as long as you have sought out the appropriate advice and you understand the risks involved. But please remember, saving is a prerequisite to investing. It's not what you make, it's what you save that counts. First and foremost, I'd like to reiterate that before you invest in the stock market, make sure that you have sufficient savings to cover your monthly expenses, and also have cash reserves available in case of emergency. But investing can really benefit you over the long term, like we just illustrated. If you put your money to work, it may help you get higher returns, especially more than the low interest rate that we're earning in savings accounts right now. However, when you have potential for higher returns, this comes at a price. Investing in stocks involves more volatility, and as a result, there is a risk of losing your money. And that risk is higher when you invest in the market. So to mitigate this added risk, diversification is key. We always focus on diversification. You don't want to put all of your money in one asset class. Various asset classes have different risk and return characteristics, and you should always consider your own circumstances. And you'll be prepared to handle the risk.
Wonderful, thank you. Our next question actually kind of plays off of that previous one. I'm fearful of the stock market because it's been so volatile, especially recently. How do I overcome that hesitation in wanting to participate?
I can take that one. You're absolutely right. This current environment is one that none of us have ever experienced. And asking this question is so timely because there are a lot of market fluctuations going on, and a lot of volatility and market corrections are very common. But like Salpi said, it's very important to diversify, be patient, and don't let your emotions get in the way. You want to think of the stock market as like your favorite department store. You know, when there's a sale, you want to go in there and buy. So when the stock market is down, you want to think, okay, now is a good time to go in and, you know, buy your favorite stocks, you know, based on good balance sheets and what the current cost is. So you want to have confidence that you're getting a deal as opposed to thinking that it's a scary time and that you're going to be paying too much. Hopefully that answers you. Mm-hmm.
That was a great answer. Thank you. Our next question is for someone who is struggling to balance multiple goals and keep up with regular expenses, what's a really good first small step to take towards investing in their future?
Hi, that's a great question. This is Salpi. I'd love to answer that question. I think the first step to take is to, as I mentioned earlier, is to put yourself first and make it a priority to take very small steps. Because when you envision your goals, it may seem very challenging to achieve. And it can be very difficult to put together a plan for the long term, even though that's what we always recommend. But if you take very small steps and create habits that will, become just second nature over time, then you'll be able to accumulate savings over the long run. So if you just take a little bit each day, or think of it as paying yourself first from your gross income, decide on an amount that is manageable, even if it is 1% of your pay. Anything more can be added incrementally over time slowly. So take small steps and break things down to a level that works for you. And then once you've established a good habit, you can build off of that going forward. I hope that answer helps.
That was great, thank you. Our next question is, how do I start to work with my kids in order to instill a value system around saving money?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm going to bring us back to one of the books that we used, that we talked about. It's a money thing. Using books with illustrations and games and this sort of thing really helps children relate. Now, recently we presented this book at the Girl Scouts annual Jamboree, I think it's called. We were part of the STEM, and we were the M in STEM, and presented basic concepts about stocks and the stock market to a group of 8-year-old girls. And you would think that it would be a topic that would be above their level of comprehension, but it wasn't. We used illustrations and we used this book that we mentioned. We made it fun and relatable in a way that they could understand. And they really ran with it. And it was very exciting to see, like Anne-Marie said, it was inspirational. So I think that children can handle and comprehend a lot more than we assume or give them credit for. If you speak to them at a level that they can relate to, then I think that's a great starting point. But using books can really be useful.
That is wonderful. Thank you. We have one more question. What is a health savings account, HSA, and should I have one?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you for bringing it up because we did not cover that in our presentation. Health savings accounts, commonly referred to as an HSA, is a tax-advantaged savings account you can use to pay for eligible healthcare expenses now and in the future. So it's a bit different from a flex health savings account where the money in an HSA can be rolled over. If you don't use it in this year, you can use it in the future. And it is a savings account, meaning you can save the money at a pace that works for you, whether you need it down the road or after you retire or for current health expenses. The health expenses have to be eligible, and it's available to people who have high deductible health plans offered through their employer. It also, which is the best part about an HSA, is it offers a triple tax advantage. All the money that you contribute, the gains within the account from interest or investment gains, and the withdrawals for the qualifying health expenses are all tax-free. I'd just like to note that on average, women, they live longer than men do, like we said. And if we take an example of a woman who's 65 years old now, she'd approximately spend $47,000 more in retirement for healthcare expenses than her male counterpart. And one way to prepare for that is with a health savings account.
That is wonderful. Thank you. That is currently all the questions that we have. If anyone else is interested in asking questions, please feel free to add them to the chat. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Corey.
Mary, this is Mary Ann. I just wanted to make a comment on the It's a Money thing and providing education to young girls.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mary Ann.
You're welcome. I'm so very passionate about that because we really believe that starting young in education really makes a difference. So I want to brag about the Western New York Women's Foundation because they provided a grant to local boys and girls clubs for young girls after school programs. So Mary and I did this for 4 different schools. And as Salpi and Anne-Marie already talked about, it's so inspiring and so important. These books for us were provided by Morgan Stanley's Diversity Council. So they're very passionate and they think it's very important to start teaching young girls early. And they've come out with a new book, A Kid's Guide to Money, for both boys and girls. So Anne-Marie and Salpi have done these with me, and it's really been a lot of fun to do this in the community and something that we want to continue to do because it's so vitally important. So thank you. And thank you, Mary. She was there with me for all of them.
Thank you, Mary Ann, and thank you for participating. There were at least 100 kids, I believe, combined. So thank you for bringing that to all the kids at Boys and Girls Club.
That's wonderful. This is Corey again. Thank you to Mary Ann, Salpi, and Anne-Marie for sharing all these strategies for managing finances and balancing varied financial goals. Thank you guys so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
thank you all
for having us.
Awesome. And thanks to everyone who joined us online on the webinar today. We hope you found it helpful. This is a friendly reminder to follow the Western New York Women's Foundation on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn for all our latest updates. In particular, we are very excited to announce that our annual What She's Made Of event will be going virtual this year. In honor of the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage this August, we will be focusing on the theme of Women Who Run. This exciting event is going to talk to female leaders who have run for office, successfully or not, sharing their stories, and we'll also spotlight some of the exceptional women in our community here in Western New York. Now more than ever, it is so important to collectively lift up our voices as women. So we hope that you can join us on Monday, August 17th for what is going to be an inspiring and empowering event. There is much more information about the event, including how to get your tickets, on our website at WNYWomen'sFoundation.org. Again, a very special thank you to our panelists and to Mary for moderating our Q&A part so well. And thank you to everyone who joined us online today. Hope you can all be safe and be well.
Thank you, Corey and Mary.
Thank you.